Hello, everyone. Welcome to the AIA Contract Documents webinar on developing a risk management plan for your construction company. Today, we're going to go through managing construction risk through effective policies and procedures. I just want to note that everyone will receive a follow-up email from AIA Contract Documents. That's going to include the slides with the presentation and the recording. So you'll have that whenever it is convenient for you. So again, keep an eye out for an email from AIA Contract Documents. Two quick disclaimers to get us started. The first is that the presentation is protected by copyright laws. As I mentioned, you'll also receive this presentation in a PDF handout, so that applies to that as well. The second, just being that any of the content that we go over today, it should not be acted upon as legal advice. If you think you have an issue that requires any legal attention, we always encourage you to reach out to a local attorney. So with the fun stuff out of the way, I'm going to hand it over to our presenter, Andrew Mendelson, FAIA, who's going to go through the content he's prepared for you today, and then I'll come back to moderate any Q&A. So if you have a question throughout the presentation, go ahead and type that into your questions box and go to webinar. We may have some time at the end to get to it. Andrew, take it away.
Thank you, Sarah, and welcome everyone. Appreciate you taking the time to listen in on today's program. My name is Andrew Mendelson. I'm Senior Vice President and Chief Risk Management Officer of Berkeley Alliance Managers. I am based in Chicago, and I'm an architect, licensed architect with 36 years of experience as a firm principal, including some corporate-wide roles as contracting officer, as a CFO, and director of practice management. I spent most of my career with large firms, OWP&P architects and engineers in Chicago, and the last 4 years of my career as director of practice management of Canon Design. This before I joined Berkeley in 2013, and kind of crossing over my practice and now my role as an insurance risk manager. I served 15 years on AIA Documents Committee, heavily involved in owner-architect agreements, architect-consultant agreements for all the different types of project delivery that AIA Contract Documents focuses on, beginning with the rather dramatic improvements of the documents in 2007, and then again in 2017, the A201 family of documents for design, bid, build. These document updates also impacted other delivery methods, construction management, design, build, IPD, program management, and the like. So with my experience as a practitioner, we deliver at Berkeley risk management education from the practitioner's perspective. Berkeley Alliance Managers is a Berkeley company, an operating unit of the Berkeley Corporation, which was established in 1967 and is publicly traded on the New York Stock Exchange. Our insurance subsidiaries are ranked A plus 15 superior by AM Best Company. And we were originally created in 2013 as Berkeley Design Professional, and that's where I provide most of my advice to architects and engineers. We added Berkeley Construction Professional in 2015 and Berkeley Service Professionals in 2016. So we brand all of that together as Berkeley Alliance Managers, and we focus strictly on professional liability insurance for those markets, construction, design, and miscellaneous service professionals. Our underwriters, claims officers, and risk management staff have on average over 20 years of experience specializing in these industries. You know, serving on Documents Committee for 15 years, I have a great appreciation for what AIA Contract Documents have meant to the industry for, what is it now, over 140 years, and how we've been established as the industry standard. It's quite an extensive process that is required to create AIA agreements. It's an iterative drafting process where the members of the committee, the ACD committee, which is roughly 30 to 35 architects from around the country representing various regions, markets, and services, Several of these architects are also attorneys, but we are advised by AIA Documents staff who are attorneys as well. So additionally, there's a lot of market research that goes into it. We seek the input of industry stakeholders, including other AIA knowledge committees and member resources groups. Very importantly are the liaisons and subject matter experts, particularly those that come from the owner side and the construction side, those trade organizations and the attorneys that represent the other parties of the agreement than the architects and engineers. So quite a comprehensive process, and the agreements are very well coordinated. The A201 family, including the B101, B103 owner-architects agreements, and the A101, 102, 103 construction agreements. These agreements take about 3 years to be coordinated. It's a very extensive process. So without further ado, let's get into the outline of our workshop today. I'm going to start out with some comments about the risk management approach for contractors. Most of the program is going to be going through 8 components that we recommend for a risk management plan for contractors. And then we'll wrap up with a brief slide addressing how these points we're making today are important to your firm's culture and business practices. So let's start with the risk management approach for contractors. Risk management is not just for architects and engineers, but it does apply to the construction field as well. And we feel that it is a key point, an essential element of loss prevention, and a key ingredient for financial success. Establishing a risk management plan, which is embraced by leadership and integrated into your firm's culture and financial and project management processes, will have a significantly positive impact on business performance. Risk management should be integrated with business and practice management and project management to facilitate firm success. We recommend the development of a business and project management processes and standards, including things such as standards, guidelines, checklists, and other tools and templates to promote efficiency and quality throughout the project delivery process. For larger construction companies, a risk management team can be an effective way to create and implement policy, share knowledge across the company, and advocate for proper risk management principles and procedures. A cross-functional team can collaborate to develop the plan and policy that is tailored to your company. For smaller firms, these key roles may reside in a smaller group of individuals internally that have a diversity of experience and acumen to business and risk management matters. Advice can also be procured from your company's insurance broker, insurance carrier, and outside legal counsel. The engagement and leadership of a committed group of individuals to the key issues and principles of risk and business management provides untold synergies to enable firm success. Key aspects of the risk management approach to companies includes understanding the sources of construction, general liability risk, and professional liability risk, identifying and anticipating potential risk factors for each project, avoiding or mitigating risk through advanced planning, senior management leadership of risk management policy, protocol, and effort for your company, and project executive engineer, superintendent understanding, leadership, and proactive implementation of risk management strategies for each project. In addition to the PDF handout you will get of this program, as Sarah mentioned, we have published a paper. It will be published by AIA soon. There's also a similar paper that's published on the Berkeley Construction Professional website. That's berkeleycp.com. And there's a risk management resources page, and you will see the risk management plan, a fundamental for business success, that contains much of the content of today's program in an outline form, as well as some helpful sidebars. So, construction projects are investments for the project owner. They're risky investments, and there's unique characteristics and unexpected conditions and situations that come up in every situation that you have. It's important to understand that the primary beneficiary of the project, whether it's a building project or an infrastructure improvement, is the owner and the users of the project. Designers get fees as a percentage of construction cost. Construction managers and construction general contractors and trade contractors can make money on a project, but when you think about the overall investment of the project, the value is really with the owner. Therefore, the owner generally accepts the highest proportion of risk. However, the owner retains architects and engineers and contractors to help them manage and minimize the impact of the cost of that risk. So therefore, in order to do that, you need to have appropriate project management, training, and organizational accountability. So for the contractor, the goal of risk management is to protect the assets, financial well-being, and reputation of the company. You also need to maintain appropriate levels and types of insurance with the understanding that not all risks are insurable. Again, throughout risk management planning, we suggest that you develop supportive project and business management policies and procedures that are appropriately scaled for the character and size of your company and projects. So let's get into the components of the risk management plan for contractors. And we'll go through each of these in detail, these 8 points. Roles, responsibilities, and risk allocation, risk analysis of the client, team, and project, also known as the go, no-go process, the need for robust initial information defining the project and its intent, the contract review and negotiation process, subcontractor selection, contracting and management, the importance of communication and documentation, particularly of the decision-making that occurs throughout project delivery, brief overview of some business management project delivery standards and guidelines, and finally, staff training and development. So let's start out by understanding the roles, responsibilities, and risk allocation of the parties of the project. And from the construction perspective, this may be the general contractor, the construction manager, the subcontractors, the project owner, of course, and the design professionals. Ultimately, risk should be allocated to the party that is best able to manage it. As an example, in traditional design, bid, build, delivery, it is the responsibility of the general contractor under A201 to establish and maintain policies and procedures on the project site relative to means, methods, and construction safety. This is a similar approach to the management of those key issues in the construction manager as constructor delivery. However, in a different delivery method, such as construction manager as advisor, risk allocation of safety procedures is commonly assigned to the subcontractors, those entities actually performing the construction work, and the CM advisor has a lesser role in the safety risk allocation. So it's important to understand the project delivery method, the contracts that address those project delivery methods, and how the duties and obligations are allocated. And it can be different for each project depending on how the contracts are modified. So, as I mentioned earlier, the risk allocation has to be fair, and while the owner does accept the greatest amount of risk, you as a contractor and myself as a design professional and others in the professions that we serve in are an extension of the owner's risk management team. The design professionals and contractors or construction managers are selected based on their expertise and experience in the project type. And you need to have sufficient qualifications in order to meet those duties and obligations. And accordingly then, that party can best foresee, control, bear, and accept the aspects of project risk for their particular role and responsibility. Starting out with a basic difference between the legal responsibilities and standards that apply to a design professional, which are provided under a professional standard of care and do not promise perfection or guarantee of a specific result. Contractors work under the construction standard, which does demand warranties and guarantees. Now, when you're working on a design-build project, if you're an architect or engineer, you have to be careful to disclaim warranty or guarantee, because the design builder, when it's led by a contractor, which is most of the case, has that warranty and guarantee standard. And that is, the attempt is to pass that down in that prime agreement to the design agreement, but the design professionals cannot accept that standard. It would be uninsurable to them and cause them to take on too much risk. So this is additional risk that a contractor takes when working under the warranty and guarantee standard. Recognize the need for both commercial general liability and other general type insurance policies such as auto and workers' comp is compared to professional liability insurance, and understand how the coverage and claims processes work for each. And contractors do have some professional liability exposure, and we'll get into that in a minute. Item number 2 is really to understand the risk analysis that you should be going through, due diligence on the project, the client, and the team. We recommend that prior to pursuing a project, you should analyze key factors in these areas in a go, no-go process and internal review. Starting with your client, what do you understand about their reputation, their experience in the project type, as well as the delivery method? Right now, we have a preponderance of design-build projects that are accelerating throughout the transportation infrastructure type of project, which impacts a lot of engineers as well as the contractors that do that type of project. So not only do the engineers and the contractors need to have experience in the project type, so does their client. And if it's a Department of Transportation for a state that's never done a design-build project before, there's an additional amount of risk in that. Getting back to the client itself, do they have goals for project quality that are similar to yours? Are they looking to build a higher quality project, or are they looking to build something cheaply just to get it done and then sell it? When you have a situation like that, particularly if it's multifamily housing, and even more extreme if it's a condominium project, that's going to increase the risk to the contractors and the design professionals for a project that's not built with very good quality, and will have problems going forward, which will create risk situations and claims. Your client also needs to be financially solvent, has the funds to pay for the construction, or the ability to get the funding and have that in place before the design and construction team kicks off the project. And finally, litigation history. If you're working in your local area, which we recommend, we have this philosophy, we say, think globally, but act locally or regionally, and understand the markets and legal environment in which you're working. Same thing for your clients. And if you are staying local, you probably know about it. But if you're pursuing projects out of town, it takes a bit more due diligence to know if your client is the type that creates claims and sues contractors or architects, that sort of thing. So you need to be very careful about that. Secondly, you need to understand the client's goals and expectations. Are they well defined? Are they realistic with regard to the program, schedule, budget? Have they established contingencies? And again, are these the type of thing, when you analyze these factors, will you be comfortable moving forward with the project? You finally need to consider your internal team. Take an example of a project type that you may be wanting to move into. Say you do a certain amount of institutional and commercial work, and you're interested in getting into the healthcare arena. Do you have the ability to perform a project in that regulatory environment, and the type of project that requires a certain expertise in a project type that you might not have? And say you've hired project managers, superintendents that have done those types of projects. Are they available to do the project that you're pursuing? And this can occur no matter what the project is. We continue to have shortages of staff. The pandemic, of course, disrupted a number of projects. There was a slowdown in construction. But the construction economy is coming back very, very strong. And we are still in a situation where we don't necessarily have enough construction superintendents, project engineers, even architects and design engineers to profitably and properly do the project. So does your team have the qualifications and the expertise necessary to succeed in the project and to win the commission in a competitive pursuit? So the design team is important as well. What experience do you have as a contractor working with the architects and engineers? Do you feel they are qualified and experienced? Do they work collaboratively with contractors, or are they confrontational? Do they treat you with fairness? That's very, very important for you as the contractor to be comfortable with the design team if you have the ability to do the due diligence on that. And as I mentioned earlier, relative to the healthcare type project, the legal, regulatory, and procedural environment of the location of each project and project characteristics and complexities is different. It certainly varies from state to state. It can even vary from city to city within a state. So very important components of the analysis. What about the design and technology that's required for the project, namely building information modeling? Will you be expected as a contractor to work in the BIM environment? Are you capable of doing that? If you are involved in pre-construction, we recommend a collaborative approach, perhaps utilizing the principles of IPD, Integrated Project Delivery, early engagement, collaboration, an integrated approach of contractors working with key trade, subcontractors, and suppliers, as well as architects and engineers, to move forward in an efficient manner. You can move forward with an IPD-type philosophy, a collaborative approach, without the project being contracted in pure IPD. And we've had a number of projects that have gone very successfully that way. Finally, looking at your client, is this the type of client where not only is there an opportunity on the project right in front of you, but what about potential future projects? Is the client in alignment with you in terms of the types of work that they do, the types of relationships they want to build to fulfill your company's strategic goals? One more point about building information modeling has to do with the issue of interoperability. Many contractors are still taking the design model and converting it to a different model so that they can work with it a little bit more easily. There are a number of industry groups that are working together to have a closer alignment and to have building information modeling systems to be more interoperable, but we're not quite there yet. Autodesk, as you probably know, has acquired a number of softwares, particularly a number of years ago when they acquired Navisworks. The design models do work quite well for contractors in some situations, but other contractors feel the need to convert the models to something they can work with themselves a little bit better. So all of these factors are important and may be a determinant whether you move forward with the pursuit of the project. So there's a lot of different factors here. The point is to consider them, perhaps create a matrix or a checklist of these factors, go through them, establish pluses or minuses and other qualitative decisions based on various criteria, and make an informed business decision by thoroughly analyzing risks, rewards, and opportunities of the project. Our third point is the need for a thorough initial project information to be defined for the project that clearly outlines the project's intent, conditions, scope, and budget. This is particularly important for a construction manager or a design builder or a general contractor that has been pre-selected and any of these parties working in the pre-construction mode. As the design team needs to have, it's very important that the owner be clear in the definition of the physical characteristics of the site and the building, the owner's program from a functional and technical and relationship of space perspective. The construction and project budget is established, that schedule milestones are defined, that if there are multi-phase requirements, that those are defined. If there is a sustainable goal, such as a LEED certification or well building or net zero, those need to be defined and in contract, and it understood what it takes for each of these parties in terms of their services and duties and responsibilities to attain the sustainability goal. The owner and the contractor's designated representatives should be identified, as well as the designated representatives of the owner's consultants, including the design team, survey, geotech, and other specialty consultants that they may have. Further to the project and construction budget, it's important that the owner establish a sufficient and realistic project and construction budget. Understanding that contingencies are going to be necessary to be established right at the beginning as the project scope and design develops, as market conditions change, as changes in project conditions occur, and during construction requiring a funding source for change orders. Little comment on market conditions at the current time. I think we're all aware that there has been disruption to the global supply chain. Due to the pandemic, we've seen images of freighters, stacked up outside of Los Angeles Harbor, and many, many weeks and sometimes months of delay of receiving material and product into the United States. There has been an extremely high demand for lumber and plywood, structural steel, causing pretty significant inflation in those products, which have a big impact on the cost of building construction. These are impacting contractors significantly right now, and these issues are continuing as it takes a while for the material to flow through as restrictions on importing and the opening up of the ports and the like for products coming overseas are eased a bit. So this is an example of why project budgets sometimes have to be fluid, that you have to give them time to develop. And again, it's the owner that is the beneficiary of this project and that controls the funding, and they need to be well financed and funded in order to handle these additional costs that are occurring. So we recommend that you not accept or establish expectations or goals that you know are unrealistic at the beginning of the project or during the development of the scope and the budget. Work with your clients to help them understand the realities of what's happening in the market right now and the true cost of projects. Item number 4 is contract review and negotiation. And again, the basic principle here is the party that's best able to manage risk is the one that should be assigned those duties and responsibilities. So it's important that the clear scope of responsibility along with fair and balanced terms and conditions be established. The scope of services and the work, duties, and obligations of the contractor. These are very well defined in the 8201-2017 General Conditions of the Cost for Construction, General Conditions of the Contract of Construction. And it's a 40-page document that defines the services and duties and responsibilities of all 3 parties of the project, the designer, the owner, and the contractor. When you have the ability to be involved in the contract drafting as you're negotiating your contract, make a clear statement about what services and duties are included and what are excluded if you wish to move away from the standard model contract language. And quite frankly, as much thought as goes into these model contracts, we know that they are edited, and when they are, be careful about what you're willing to take on and what you are clear about what you are excluding. Understand design delegation and design assist. Design delegation is where in the specifications from the architects and engineers, final design is delegated to a contractor or a subcontractor or a supplier, such as for fabrication and erection of structural steel, such as for handrail systems, prefabricated stairs, windows, curtain walls, any number of products where the intent and the scope is defined in the architect's construction documents and engineer's documents, but the final design is that of the contractor. And this is a source of professional liability risk. So as I mentioned earlier, contractors need more than general liability coverage. They do need professional liability coverage because of the risk that's going to flow from a supplier or subcontractor to a general contractor or construction manager. And however, you don't take on, certainly, even in that situation, all of the risk of the design professional. Contractor should not assume the risk of a design professional regarding the design overall of the project to be code compliant. However, a contractor under H1 typically has a duty to inform the owner and the architect if it becomes aware of a discrepancy with those standards. Oftentimes, contractors have important and valuable insights on specific systems, such as exterior wall systems, roofing, waterproofing. Speak up, identify those issues. Oftentimes, they happen in the submittal process. Bring them to the attention of the owner and the architect so a situation can be corrected by them in their revised documents and specifications prior to constructing an improper system. I can tell you in my 8 years experience now in the claims that we see a number of situations like that where the contractor has brought to the attention an issue to an architect where the architect has ignored the advice and it has come back to bite them because the contractor was correct. So it's part of the collaboration that really should exist on a project. Trust each other, have respect for one another, and try to avoid problems before they occur. Very important component of contract review and negotiation is dispute resolution, and a process that is consistent throughout the construction and design agreements. For the contractors and construction managers, it's very important that the contractor, construction managers, and subcontractors are all in the same dispute resolution process. And we recommend a multi-step dispute resolution process that uses a meet and confer process that can hopefully resolve things at the project level, then followed by voluntary mediation, and then that occurs prior to a binding dispute resolution process such as litigation or arbitration. The AIA documents have been promoting mediation prior to litigation or arbitration for over 30 years. The meet and confer process only kind of came into the discussion about 15 years ago, and it seems kind of obvious, but particularly when it's a large project with very large architect, engineer, and ENR 500 contractors, sometimes things can be occurring at the project level that the executives of the company are not even aware of. And so what meet and confer calls for is a meeting of the people at the project level and at the executive level where the executives have the right to make decisions and bind their companies in a dispute resolution process. So this multi-step process is helpful, and if people are realistic in treating each other fairly, oftentimes things can get settled at mediation, not even need to go into litigation or arbitration. Regarding your own development within your construction company of the contract, we recommend a standard process for contract review, negotiation, and approval. That if you have a devoted risk manager or a senior executive with skills in that at your company, that person should be involved. Certainly the project executive and the project manager of the project should be involved. And if it's a larger and more complex project, likely you're going to engage your attorney directly in that. You should recognize that it's going to be extremely difficult to attain a perfect contract. However, when you're going through the process of negotiation, it's an excellent communication step with your client, with the owner, that enables people to understand better what the roles and responsibilities and expectations are. And again, similar to the go, no-go process, you are making an informed business decision. There might be some additional risk you're willing to take on, but due to the benefits of the project, you're willing to take it on and determine whether you can manage the risk of the projects for the fees and the price that you've negotiated for the construction project. One other aspect that I'd like to mention is that while the actual review and negotiation of the contract is usually within a more limited number of people, as I identified, it's important that the construction team members be educated on key aspects of the contract, particularly like the business aspects, schedule, budget, deliverable, the change management process, awareness that the change condition has occurred, and notification to the appropriate parties at the owner, gaining the authorization of your client, of the owner, prior to proceeding with change order work, and making sure everything is properly documented. It's also important that your team members understand, in general, the roles and responsibilities of the other parties. That if the owner's got information it needs to provide and make decisions, that they understand that. They can help the project manager manage the project when the team members have a basic understanding of the business issues and key practice issues that impact project delivery. Item number 5 is subcontractor selection, contracting, and management. And of course, the actual work on a project is largely done by the subcontractors. Of course, there are general contractors and some construction managers that self-perform certain aspects of the work, of the construction work, but most of it is done by the subcontractors. So they should be selected based on their expertise and experience in the project type. Local presence, we think, is very important, particularly for callback work, and your company's own experience with those subcontractors. Very important that you align the terms and conditions of their contract with yours. You want them operating on the same ground rules as you, particularly relative to payment terms, the aforementioned dispute resolution process, safety, compliance matters, such as confidentiality, non-discrimination, compliance with laws of the area, and diversity issues. These last two have become very, very prominent in contracts. So make sure that your subcontractors are operating on the same ground rules that you are as a general contractor or construction manager. You should require the proper levels of insurance based on the scope and complexity of the subcontractor's work and monitor that for compliance. AIA in 2017 introduced an insurance exhibit to the A101, and this has to do with the complexities of construction insurance and that there are different products that are available depending on the need of the owner and the need for you as the contractor to have certain levels and certain types of insurance. So this is where you need to work with your insurance broker to understand these issues, work with the owner, and come up with the insurance programs that are most logical for that project. Relative to your subcontractor performance, of course, you need to manage them during the project, and we recommend that you evaluate them not only during the project, but after project completion to determine whether or not you want to bring them back for the next project. Perhaps it's a subcontractor you've used a number of times successfully, but then on this project something went wrong in one of the areas. We recommend that you identify what those issues are and have a discussion with the subcontractor at the appropriate executive level to see if those issues can be overcome and you can start working together again. Because the more consistency you have with your team, the better your project delivery process and overall quality will likely be. Item number 6 is recognizing the importance of communication and documentation, particularly as decision-making is happening on the project. Effective communication throughout the project is essential to managing not only the project, but your client's expectations. And thorough documentation is very important as a source of defense in the event of a claim or a dispute. There's going to be turnover on project teams. Despite your good efforts to maintain and retain staff, the chances are there's going to be some turnover. So if an issue comes up 3 years later after the project is completed, you really need to have a thorough project record, a paper trail that defines what issues were considered, what decisions were made, and how people proceeded. In many cases, quite frankly, some of our defense attorneys have told us that the written documentation is even more important than the actual testimony of a member of a design and construction or owner team during a deposition or other legal proceeding. So documentation, project records are really important. Also important to realize that email is discoverable and lives forever. Don't treat it casually. Treat it as seriously as you would any written letter. You should have a communication plan for the project. Again, if you're involved in the pre-construction process that aligns the owner and project team requirements for meetings, milestones, and decision points. Determine who's going to be the author of the main project documents. Usually during the design phase, it's the architect. But then there are ways that you can help facilitate communication by using documentation management systems and software. Nuforma, Procore, other types of softwares. And I'm sure most of you are familiar with those. Make sure that the proper licenses are in place. Make sure that you have the rights to access those documents after the project is completed. Perhaps discs, CDs need to be burned so that you have those as part of your permanent project record. You don't want to be in a situation where all the project documentation is sitting in a software system somewhere that 3 years from now nobody has access to. So this all should be part of a developed records management program that your company should have so that you have the ability to gain access to those documents that you need. Also important on the subject of communication and decision-making is the owner's decision-making process. Oftentimes, the designated representative of the owner has a certain limitation to decisions they can make relative to a change order, as an example. They may have a $10,000 limit or a $25,000 limit, and you've got a $100,000 change order in front of them. Well, they're going to have to go to others within their organization. Hopefully they've gotten some advance approvals to streamline that process, but it's important to know what the process is so you can build in the necessary lead time and allow for the level of review authority and approvals that are required. Reinforcing again, as I mentioned earlier, the importance of the change management process. Identify, notify, authorize, and document. Even for designers that do additional services during the design phase, they are required to get authorization from the client prior to proceeding with the work. The same thing, obviously, with contractors. You need to be confident that your owner's representative, when they give you an approval, it's valid, but you need to get that authorization before you do change order work. And then finally in this section, during meetings and the like, you're not court stenographers, but what you really want to capture in your documentation are options that were considered, recommendations made, and the decisions that were reached, particularly if the decisions reached by the owner were to select a product or a system that is lesser quality than what you as a contractor or maybe the architects and engineers were recommending. Because when they do something like that, yeah, they're saving some money at the outset, but the chances are the quality is not as good and it could turn out to be a claim situation later. So identifying the risk factors of that as compared to the benefits is an important aspect of project documentation, particularly relative to changes. Okay, item number 7 are business management or project delivery tools and techniques, as well as understanding of what the roles and responsibilities are. So it starts with, establishing and assigning a capable construction team, general contractors, CM, subcontractors, particularly at the leadership level and also the mid-level that are going to be actually implementing the project. Their experience, their expertise, particularly in the project type. It's very important that anyone in a supervisory position understand the construction documents and embrace the many duties that are defined in 8201-2017, such as coordination, supervision, safety, and other key duties. Really understand the plans and specifications and other conditions of the contract. These are all complementary and what's required by one are required by others. So there's a coordination duty of even understanding what the documents say and how the submittals and shop drawings fit into that process, that they are all properly coordinated. One of the project delivery strategies that we feel works very well from a business management standpoint is to develop and apply consistent project delivery standards, such as guidelines, checklists, procedures, and protocols that support efficiency and quality management throughout the project phases. This may start out as a very long list of items, and that's good. You want it to be thorough. But when you set up the project, you may be able to streamline that list if it's a less complex and simpler project, or the list may have to be expanded depending on the scope and complexity of the project. We just think that when you're operating your project and delivering your project consistently, you're going to have fewer gaps, particularly in quality management, and fewer claims going forward. Another suggestion is to have an internal peer review process as a quality management strategy. After you've established, your direction, maybe bring somebody in, maybe bring a project executive in that's not working on the project and have them overview the process and your quality management strategies and see if they have some additional insights. And when you're a larger company, you've got those kind of resources you can draw upon. I talked a little bit earlier about building information modeling and other technologies. The better coordinated you can be, that's important. Some contractors are quite advanced in BIM, even going beyond 3D and going into the fourth dimension, which is cost, and the fifth dimension, which is time. It's a pretty sophisticated approach, but you may have developed that at your company, and you may feel it's a worthwhile investment to do that. One of the beauties of building information modeling is the ability to build a project virtually, VDC, virtual design and construction. That can, when done properly, can help you anticipate, identify, and proactively manage certain project risks, including conflicts, coordination issues. But with or without BIM, you need to be very proactive in this regard. You need to be able to look ahead, understand unforeseen conditions that may arise, that may impact the cost and the budget. You need to understand that there could be trade and construction document coordination gaps, and you should engage and develop solutions collaboratively with the design team and the owner. We recommend that contractors run towards problems rather than run away from them. We make the same suggestion to our designers. Bad news does not age well. It's better that you address these things proactively within the boundaries of your responsibilities as defined in contract. You don't want to step over the line and take over someone else's duties, but the better that a construction team and a design team can work collaboratively with an owner, when a problem comes up, the fewer claims will arise, and hopefully the project can stay on track and remain profitable. And then, clearly you need to be prompt in notifying the client when they need to approve change orders, as well as monthly pay requests. Your cash flow and your profitability is dependent on being timely in that regard. Finally, in this section, we assume that most contractors track and share financial performance data with key members of the construction team. Particularly the project leaders need to be accountable for profitable performance, and as well as client satisfaction. Monitoring client satisfaction through consistent communication, which hopefully was established in your communication plan, is important. Sometimes you can get so close to the actual work that's going on that you lose track of who the ultimate client is, and perhaps it's someone above the designated representative that you're dealing with, and maybe it's an opportunity for the project executive on your construction team to be meeting with a more senior person at the owner level to make sure that they are happy and that your construction team is meeting their expectations. So there's two things to monitor. There's the financial performance and progress, and there's client satisfaction. And if you can commit to doing completed project reviews where you can identify lessons learned and then adapt your future project processes accordingly, That's very, very helpful and recommended. A lot of companies talk about doing this, but don't actually do it because they're busy going on to the next project. However, doing lessons learned sessions is extremely valuable to improve your processes going forward. Our last item then is staff training and development. As I mentioned earlier, despite the slowdowns in the construction industry, there still is high demand for construction professionals, superintendents, executives, trade workers, design professionals, engineers, and it's important for each of these parties to invest in your current staff. Your people are arguably your most valuable asset, and we recommend that talent be developed, fostered, and retained for the long term. We recommend that you consider development at all levels, from the executive level down to the field-based resources, as well as your office support teams. For people particularly that are seeking to grow into a position of leadership, they should start with some training in team management skills, communication, and specific training on leadership. We think it's helpful for the culture of your firm and for staff retention to offer opportunities for growth at all levels of the project. And that will help you recruit and foster strong project leaders. So our concluding slide is a comment about your company's culture and the importance of quality, risk management, and client satisfaction. We feel that once the risk management plan becomes ingrained into the culture of the firm and integrated with project management and business management tools and techniques, the result will be tangible and positive. Everyone in the company benefits from projects that are implemented with quality and profitable results. Your investment in professional and skill development for your staff will promote recruitment and retention, enabling a more stable environment to support growth and development of individuals and the company overall. And then, of course, client satisfaction promotes further work with preferred owners. And those companies that can do a high degree of repeat work for clients that they trust, that they have the feelings of mutual trust and respect for, will definitely be more profitable and more healthy going forward. So it's a lot of material that we have covered today. I am here right now for about, looks like we got 7 or 8 minutes left. I'm going to ask Sarah to go through any questions we may have received at this time, and I'll do my best to answer them.
All right, thank you very much, Andy. So we have, as we mentioned, about 8 minutes left. We're going to get through as many audience questions as we can. Anytime that you have a question, just type that into your questions box and go to webinar. I'm building up a little bit of a queue here. So the first question I have that came in is just asking, would a local jurisdiction, so like a city or a state, and or authority having jurisdiction, wouldn't that also be considered a key party to evaluate and allocate risk even though they're not part of the actual contract?
Yep, absolutely. I tried to make that point relative to the different types of projects and different types of expertise. It's an example for a healthcare project. To get into that type of market, understanding the authorities having jurisdiction, state health departments, other components of the governmental structure that has an influence over that project. And I made the point regarding certain project delivery methods and design build becoming a popular delivery method in public works. Do these public entities have experience in dealing with design build? Do they understand how it works and how it can work effectively? So yes, there are differences in jurisdiction. My firm did a lot of healthcare projects. We had offices around the country. I was based in Chicago, as I mentioned, so we have a State Department of Health in Illinois. We did a lot of hospital projects in California. Where the State Department of Health and other entities have significantly greater influence on the projects. Heavy-duty procedural requirements, standards, and the like, and it has an impact on a project delivery from the standpoint of schedule and construction costs. So it really does matter. And that's why, we have this phrase about, thinking globally, which really has to do with strategically thinking about how maybe your company is going to grow or wants to grow if you want to grow, but really act locally, understanding what the legal and regulatory standards are in your area and of the authorities having jurisdiction over those projects. Great question.
All right, thank you. My next question for you is, should we be providing these general plans to our insurance representative? What role does our broker play, and how does it affect our insurance policies?
Probably, if you're going to engage your insurance broker, they need to understand really the contract, not necessarily they don't need to see the plans and specifications. They won't be able to understand that. But insurance brokers that specialize in the construction and the design industry have skills in reviewing contracts for proper risk management allocation. This is a skill and a service that is more prevalent on the design professional side than it is in the construction side. Contractors tend to be a little bit more knowledgeable about the contract content in this allocation of roles and responsibilities because it's so key to the core of what they do. But there are certain brokers that do have the expertise, and if they can see your contract, particularly understanding the initial information and the budgets and the schedules, project delivery methods, they can provide input to you in that regard.
All right, thank you very much. Next question is, there is a trend with architecture engineering firms pushing down design responsibility to contractors. For example, requiring a subcontractor to provide engineered stamped drawings on stairs when previously this was performed by the architecture engineering team. Can you please comment on this trend, specifically with any recommendations for contractors on how to mitigate these design risks?
It's a good point. Design delegation, as I mentioned, has been around for a long, long time. I've now been in the industry for over 40 years, and allocating final design in structural steel to the fabricators and erectors has been around, even longer than I've been practicing. Same thing with curtain wall. As certain components of projects have become more complex, such as like glass handrail systems, and I think the questioner, raised the question of like prefabricated stairs. There's been more that has been delegated, and I am aware that contractors are pushing back on some of that. I'm also aware that, the AIA Documents Committee is considering this input from the construction community and will address it appropriately. So I don't think what's happening out there conceptually is different than it has been, for the last 40 or 50 years. It just might be getting to be more extensive. What needs to happen is that it's clear from the general contractor to the subcontractor that this is your duty and responsibility. Your structural steel subcontractor has that responsibility. They should have the proper insurance. And again, this is why contractors have professional liability exposure. Because, the steel fabricator may hire an engineer that has insurance, but it might be a minimal level of insurance. And if there's a problem and there's a claim and it was due to the way that the steel was detailed and fabricated by the contractor's engineer, additional exposure is going to flow up to that subcontractor and then to the general contractor. And that's why each of these parties needs professional liability insurance. So really understand where your risks may come from, and make sure you are having those parties hire the proper qualified engineers, and hopefully they are insured, and the overall insurance required for the subcontractors and the general contractors and construction managers. Of course, anything can be negotiated. So if there are certain aspects, when you go through the specifications where you think that things are, hey, this is ridiculous, this is out of control, then push back on your client and try to negotiate it out. But design delegation is something that's been around for a long time and will likely continue for many years going forward. So it's a risk that needs to be managed.
All right, thank you very much. Now that has taken us to the end of our hour, so I'd like to thank Andrew for coming to speak. I know we didn't get to all of the questions, but everyone will receive the slides and recording of this presentation via email from AIA Contract Documents. So thank you very much again, Andrew, for your time, and have a good rest of your day.
Thank you.